10th. In previous video we are studying about the sexual reproduction in flowering plant. In the previous video we have learn about the different parts of the flower and what are the different which are the cells which work as a reproductive organs in the plants. Now this we are going to study about there are two processes of pollination in the flowers in plants, in which first is self pollination and second is cross pollination. In self pollination, what happens in self pollination? When the pollen grain from transfer from in same flower, when pollen grain transfer in the same flower, then that type of pollination is known as self pollination. But when then the pollen grain of the plant transfer from one flower to another flower, then that type of pollination is known as cross pollination. Suppose we have a one full plant in which one flower has its own pollen grain and it transfers that pollen grain in itself. That itself processing of pollen transferring in itself is known as a self pollination. But when that one flower pollen grain transfer to the another flower in the same plant is known as cross pollination. After cross pollination, when pollen has transferred from one flower to the stigma, then the process of fertilization is started. In this process of fertilization, what happens when the pollen grain come in the contact to the stigma? This is the stigma portion and this is the pollen grain. When then pollen grain fall on this stigma, then this pollen grain slowly makes a pollen tube. This pollen tube then transfer the germ cell of the pollen grain, the male germ cell. Pollen grain contains the male germ cell, and then when the pollen fall on the stigma, then this pollen grain start forming a pollen tube, and this pollen tube making this pollen tube, it reaches to the female part of the flower, and through this pollen tube the male germ cell transfer from upper part to the inside the ovary of the flower. This is the pollen grain, this is the stigma portion, and this is the male germ cell which transfer from him, and this tube which it forms, the pollen grain forms a tube, that tube is known as pollen tube. And after this there is the ovary portion in which the female reproductive part is there. In this ovary contains the ovule, and ovule contains the female germ cell. These are the female germ cells, and this female cell, when the male germ cell goes moves from this pollen tube and reaches to the female germ cell, then the fertilization process starts. After they reaching over this female germ cell, then they get fused to each other and they start forming the other stages of the fertilization, and they mix up with each other, and the fusion take place, and the germ cells of the both it is converted into a zygote form. They forms a zygote. This zygote then slowly have so many stages and it forms a new seed. After this after the flowering plants, reproduction of flower plants, next we are going to study about the reproduction in human beings. In reproduction of human beings, during our full lifespan, there are so many changes occurs in our human body, and this changes from newborn to a child, and from child to adult, and adult to the older ones. The body consists of so many changes, it performs so many changes like growth, development. And during the time of reproduction, what happened at the age of from 10 to till 19 age, in girls and boys, there are so many changes have been seen, and this changes has come because of the different formation, the forming of hormones and other things with changes which happens in our body. They show such outer changes also in the boys and girls, and these changes which activates the reproductive part of a male and a female is known as puberty part, in which a person a child which started at age from 12 to 18 included in the age of puberty. In puberty there are so many changes seen in the boys and girls. Hairs may grow on overall the body or the different parts of the body. Body of the boys start forming muscles, they will become muscular. The voice of the boys become hard, and the voice of the girls becomes soft, and the girls, there are different type of hairs over there comes over their body, and other changes are also there which in which the reproductive organs start and the hormones start forming, so that the different type of structure like the menstruation cycle has been started in girls, but it has been seen that the puberty has been started in girls earlier as compared to the boys. During this time, height, growth, body has been seen at it is the highest peak where the body gain its maximum height, and other things in which the different arms and legs, thinner hairs are found on the arms and legs, thighs become hard, and the other things like the body is different erect and erases, the girl's body get a shapes and a boy's forms a muscular body, and this type of characters are seen in the puberty changes. And the period during adolescence, the period in which the body shows its changes from a journal from a growth begins to a slow down after some time when the tissues get mature, reproductive tissues get mature, then the period during adolescence which converted into is called as puberty, which shows the stage is called as puberty. After this puberty, there are so many changes. Hormones are secreted, different types of germ cells are produced in the body of the male and females, and these germ cells further goes for the other production, and the releasing from one person and the releasing of these germ cells and transfer of these germ cells include the process of reproduction. In flowers, we have seen that there are germ cells which falls from one flower to same in a same flower, but in human beings they some require the mating intercourse are there, mating processes are there from which the germ cells, male germ cells has been transferred to the female body, so that the fertilization process take place there. In this we have also seen that in female reproductivity, baby is also carried for a long time inside the mother body till the delivery time, and there are also so many changes. And first we are going to study about the male reproductive system. In male reproductive system, we are going to talk about the formation of germ cell or sperms take place in the testes. First we have to see that the formation of sperms take place. Sperms are the male gametes and male germ cells which take place, which forms in the testes. These testes are located over the abdominal cavity of the body of the male, and in the scrotum. Scrotum is mainly mainly located outside the body of the male, because it requires the very low temperature, and a normal human body has its temperature 37 degrees Celsius, but it requires less than 37 degrees Celsius. That why this scrotum part of the male body is located outside the body, so that its temperature remains the normal temperature, it consists normal temperature, and this here the formation of the sperm take place, and the sperm secretes, and the main hormone is a testosterone. Testosterone is the male hormone which further get fused with the female gametes for the formation of the zygotes and then the baby. These are the testosterone are the hormones. Other than the other things which are found in the male reproductive system is a vas deferens. Vas deferens, what is the function of vas deferens? It connects it forms a tube like structure. It forms a tube like structure between the scrotum and a urinary bladder. It forms a tube, so that this male gamete cell can be transferred from scrotum to a urinary bladder with the help of a vas deferens, which is a tube structure. After that, next is the urethra. What does urethra do? Urethra consists of it also forms a common passage for the sperm and urine. Transfer of the sperm and urine, it forms a common path for both. Then other than that, there are also a vas deferens glands like prostate and seminal vessels and at their secretion, so that their sperms are now in the fluid, which makes their transport easier, and this sperm, this in urethra and vast difference. There are some other type of prostate glands which produces some type of a liquid which fluid which helps the sperm to move from one place to another place and provide nutrition to the sperm, require nutrition to the sperm. Other than this, the sperm, next is the sperm. Sperm is a small is a tiny bodies that consist of mainly genetic material, and a long tail that helps to move forward to the germ cell. The sperm consists of, this sperm has a one structure and it consists of a long tail which helps the sperm to move from one place to the another place. It flows from one place to another place and it consists the genetic material in it. This is all about our male reproductive system. In our next video we are going to study about female reproductive system. And your work has to, you have to draw the diagram of this process of fertilization given in your book on the page number 132, the germination of a pollen on the stigma, how the germination take place in the flowering plant. And next another diagram you have to draw is the male reproductive system. You have to draw both the diagram related to this and this diagram in your notebook. Male reproductive system diagram has been given in your book 137 page number. You have to draw that diagram and you have to learn all these things, and please write these notes in your notebook.